How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 2 of What If Deku Had White Flames. And before I start this What If off, I would like to ask all of you to put all of your What If suggestions down in the comments section below. I really enjoyed reading them last time, and I look forward to reading them today as well. And now, let's begin. 2 weeks had passed since Izuku and Todoroki took the recommendations test. They were now putting on their UA school uniforms and were beginning to leave their house, as they would then begin their walk to the UA campus to begin their first day at hero school, and their hero training and hero venture begins. As they would finally arrive at the school campus and would then end up finding their classroom after around 20 minutes of wandering around the hallways of the building. And once they would arrive, they'd open the door to see that they are about an hour early. The clocks at their house were way wrong and way off from the actual time, and they just never noticed. So they were an hour early from when the school actually started. So they would be forced to sit down and wait a very long and boring hour waiting for anybody else to arrive. However, 10 minutes after they showed up, a blue-haired and very tall kid would end up showing up as well, who was also very early, just like them, as he would then sit down next to them and would say, "Glad to see another bunch of people who show up early, just like me. I guess we are the responsible ones in this class who know not to be late on your first day of school." Izuku would just slowly nod his head and would then go back to resting his head on his arms, just trying to fall back asleep. He had woken up so early to get here on time that he just lost all track of time and just wanted to get a few extra minutes of sleep at best. So, after the hour was up and people started to pile into the classroom, Izuku would finally wake up from all of the noise. So he would look around, just wondering where all of the noise was, to see everyone staring at him. He was the only one who was falling asleep, and he was sleep-talking as he was sleeping, just as if he was fighting robots and telling them to just destroy or reboot themselves, because why not? Izuku would just be looking at them, they were staring at him, as they would all realize he was staring right back at them, as they would then go back to just talking with their friend groups that they had already made in the 10 minutes they were talking to each other. And finally, 10 minutes late, Aizawa would end up showing up in his yellow sleeping bag, as it would start to crawl into the classroom, as many students were shocked what it was, one of them even going up and poking the sleeping bag, until Aizawa would then unzip the sleeping bag, stepping out of it, and telling them all to quiet down. It took them a whole of 10 minutes to fully quiet down before he could even go into the classroom. And finally, after that, he would point up to the board and tell them that they are going to go down to testing site E. They have to find where it is, and if you don't find it in less than 10 minutes, while also going to the locker rooms and getting changed into your PE uniforms that I have now put on your desk, which everyone would look down surprised that there was now uniforms on their desk, or PE uniforms. You all have 10 minutes starting now. Don't run. If you run, you could get detention and possibly be expelled too. Just hoping you all will make it there on time, but if not, good luck. As Aizawa would then walk off, as a bunch of people would get up and start to run off into the hallways, just as Izuku would get up, still quite tired, as he would finally get up and would start to walk down the halls, just wondering where everything was. As he would just think, okay, why don't I just go to a bathroom and change into this, because, that's a more realistic option than looking for the locker rooms. So that's exactly what he did, as he would then walk back to the UA, or first year 1A classroom, put his clothes on his desk, as he would then just walk back to where he found the bathroom, and would begin his trek down to the base floor, as he would leave through the entrance and would start looking around for where city site E was, or testing site E. As he would look around on the signs, as he would see a sign pointing to where all of the E testing sites were, testing site E, city E, and training facility E, as Izuku would just go over to that facility, as he would end up finding Aizawa standing in a dirt field. As Izuku would make it there first, as he would be there with 5 minutes remaining. As finally, after a couple or so minutes, a bunch of other students would make it there in a massive group, as there were no people late since most of them had ran, as many of them would start questioning how Izuku had gotten here so fast, but he would just not worry about all of them talking. So Izuku would then look over at Aizawa as if asking what they will be doing here, as Aizawa would then start to explain that they are going to be testing their quirks, and that's how he's going to know how much that's how he's going to know how much potential all of the students have. I couldn't think of potential. So Izuku would be stepped up first, as he would then be thrown a ball and asked to throw it as far as he can. However, he can use his quirk in this, as Aizawa would then start to explain how they would always take tests once a year to measure their strength, but they could never use their quirks. This is finally where they can show how strong and powerful their quirks really are. So Izuku would then turn the ball into just a flaming mess, as white flames would completely surround the ball, as Izuku would then launch it as far as he can, as the white flames would basically be used as just a jet engine propelling itself forward, going very, very far, as Aizawa would then look down at his just phone device or calculator device, as he would say, "You got 200 meters, good job. Can another student step up, please?" As one of them would then yell out, "Oh my gosh, this looks like so much fun!" As Aizawa would then glare at the general area where that student said that, and would then speak, "Oh, if it's so much fun then, how about the first or the last student in this supposed test gets expelled? Would it be so much fun then?" As they would all just quiet down, as Bakugo would then step up and would throw the ball as far as he could, landing around 1,500 meters, 500 meters less than Izuku. As Izuku would look at Bakugo to see Bakugo glaring at him. How dare somebody just beat him in something, even though Izuku had gone first and Bakugo failed to beat Izuku, not the other way around. So everyone would start to do the tests. Izuku would end up getting third, while Bakugo second and Momo first. Just she could make things that allowed her to easily get first, as she was able to make a cannon for the first test, the ball throw, and was able to make a whole assortment of random items that could help her along the way in all of the tests. It was basically like a cheat code. And the person in last place was Mineta. However, Aizawa would tell them that everyone here has potential, and he has decided not to expel anyone, as he saw potential in every single one of them, and just decided he's having a good day and doesn't want to ruin it by doing a ton of paperwork. So they would all be told they can go back to the classroom, get changed or whatever, and then they can leave and go back home, which is what Izuku and the rest of his classmates would do. As Izuku would be walking home, as he would then have someone run up close to him and would say, "Oh, hi, my name's Uchaku Uraka, what's yours?" Izuku would say his name was Izuku Todoroki, as he would continue walking, as she would start to try to spark a conversation with him. However, Izuku's not one to talk very much. He's a very quiet person and just doesn't really like being in conversations. It's just something he doesn't like to do unless he is trash talking with a person he's fighting. That's pretty much the only time he'll really talk, as Izuku would continue on with his trek back home, as Uraraka would start trying to talk with him, but he would just continue walking, as Uraraka would say, "Well, it's nice talking to you," as she would start to walk home. Izuku would continue walking, but just thinking of what made Uraraka want to talk to Izuku, or what made her want to talk to him. What did she see in him that was so special, or something? Izuku didn't really have a lot of friends. He was pretty much bullied until the age of 7 because he was quirkless, even though he just didn't develop his quirk, and that just caused him to be not seen as someone who should be friends, as they also saw his quirk as dangerous and evil. It's a soulless white flame And after they heard about what he did to his brother and father, everyone was just scared of him, and he was never basically able to make any friends. And so Zuko doesn't have the social skills a lot of kids his age has, and neither does Todoroki. Since Todoroki was always quiet to begin with, he just was never approached and never approached anyone to become friends with them. And so Izuku and Todoroki would have a very quiet and reserved personality. However, Todoroki would hate Izuku, mostly because his hatred started growing from when Izuku shifted into basically the star child. Sure, Todoroki will always be the number one star child because he has 2 quirks, but with Izuku's fire and easily able to beat him every time they would spar together, that's what caused him to start hating him. How can this person who's deemed as quirkless and weak barge into his life and just change everything? It's something Todoroki started to hate. Even though he hated his father, he started to hate Izuku more and would start hating Endeavor less and less. So when Izuku would get home, he would go into his room and would just sleep, relaxing for the day. As this would continue on, going to school, doing all the work, just learning new things, as finally a month into his UA school, or his UA schooling, he would finally have his first hero class. As they would be sitting antsy after their lunch break, as it had already ended, as they would all be sitting in class, as they were very talkative. This was the day they were going to see who their hero teacher was, and what they will be doing in hero training in class. As Izuku would be sitting there waiting for something to happen, as finally they would start to hear stomping from down the hall. One kid would go up to investigate, but as soon as they put their hand on the doorknob, immediately the door would be slammed open, breaking it off of its hinges, breaking the door in 2, and a bunch of tiny wooden pieces falling off, splattering everywhere, as All Might would then yell, "I am here!" As the person, being Kaminari, who had just touched the door handle and was now being slammed against the wall by the door, would tap All Might on the shoulder with a very shaky hand, as if asking him to get off of him, as All Might would then just take the door off from the wall, as you would see Kaminari there falling back, just completely dazed, as he'd basically just gotten slammed into the wall by All Might and a door. As Kaminari would ask to go to the health room, as All Might would say, sure. All Might was already pretty nervous from the start. This was his first ever teaching job, and he had just basically hurt one of his students. Not the greatest start in the world. As All Might would then return with Kaminari, who had a couple of band-aids around his body, as he would then go back sitting down at his desk, as the entire class would then just instantly go quiet as soon as both of them returned, as All Might would then say, that was a bit strange. But hello, class. It is I, All Might, and today is your first hero training class. And you can't be heroes without your hero suits, as All Might would then get and press a red button, as suitcases would then pop out of the wall, with a number on each suitcase, as each desk had a number in the top left corner of it, and so that would be their assigned suitcase. Izuku would be numbered 2, as Izuku would go up and grab the number 2 suitcase. Izuku and everyone, 2 weeks into their hero school training and all of that, would end up being asked to design their hero costume and basically just go around talking to the support course people as they were going to be making their costumes, and they were supposed to talk with them what they wanted in their hero suit. And so Izuku would go and do that, as Izuku would end up getting basically having a a black coat around him. It was basically just that. All he had was a black coat and a assortment of different things that he could use that complemented his white fire. You can imagine his hero suit however you want. I really couldn't care less. This is basically just a story you're supposed to imagine in your head, and it's supposed to be very descriptive, but I'm not really good at describing off the top of my head what a hero suit should look like. So once everyone got their hero costumes out of their suitcase, they would be told that they can now go back to the locker rooms and then meet him at City C, and that is where they are going to be doing this test. And so everyone would go to the locker rooms hurrying, very basically trying to hurry as fast and get there as fast as possible, as they wanted to do this hero training as fast as possible. As they would all get there after changing into their hero suits, as All Might would then show them a table with a bunch of random numbers and like ping pong balls in a just glass bowl, as All Might would tell them that the number on their desk also showed which person and which teammate they will be playing with in this Heroes vs. Villains test, as All Might would then make the teams and would then describe what the test is. Izuku would be paired up with Uraraka, while Todoroki and Bakugo would be paired up, and that would be the first group. Bakugo and Todoroki as the villains, Izuku and Uraraka as the heroes. As All Might would then tell them, alright, you, the villains, please go into this building, as All Might would point behind him. It was a very tall, narrow building, as All Might would tell them, here is a fake bomb made out of paper mache. Please go and put it up at whatever floor you want. Just try to hide it. And all the heroes have to do is touch it or disarm and disable both of you by putting this quirk canceling tape around you, and that's how they can win the bomb. And then you have 15 minutes to basically just avoid them finding it, and if they don't find it in that 15 minutes, you win. And remember, it is not real, it is fake, All Might would say, as both Bakugo and Todoroki would walk into the building seeing this fake paper mache sculpture, as they would then grab it and put it all the way up at the top floor. I mean, the building was only 4 floors tall, but it was a very long and narrow building, so it was quite hard to navigate it, but they ended up finding their way within 5 minutes. So, once that 5 minutes was up, All Might would then, over a loudspeaker, tell them they may now enter the building, as both Izuku and Uraraka would enter it, as they would start to look around. Izuku would be on guard all the time, just hoping that Bakugo wouldn't jump around a corner with an explosion ready to blow his brains out. So Izuku, on guard the entire time, would then see Bakugo jump out of the corner. However, Bakugo didn't, as Izuku was basically just hallucinating from the amount of stress he was in, not wanting to get his face smashed in by an explosion. So Izuku would then stand still, trying to calm himself. He was way too stressed out for his own good, even though he shouldn't be. Izuku had trained for years. Why was he suddenly now getting stressed out? It just didn't make sense. As Izuku would calm himself down, as he would then activate his white flame mode, as he would then have flames around his fists and legs, as Izuku would start to run around the building, jumping around corners, ready to punch somebody, just hoping that no one was there. As finally, on the 3rd floor, he would finally meet Bakugo, as Uraraka, having to catch her breath from keeping up with Izuku, would tell Izuku what should she do, as Izuku would tell her to run up to the top floor and do not enter the building yet. Let him take care of Bakugo first. And that's what she would do. She would run past Bakugo, as Bakugo would look at Izuku. Bakugo, in his mind, Izuku was the only rival he had, and that Izuku was the only person that could compare to Bakugo. But he was going to defeat Izuku so bad, it was basically going to make Izuku look like a tiny little bug Bakugo could squash within 2 fingers. So Bakugo would launch himself right at Izuku with 2 explosions in each hand, slamming both of his hands together, sending a massive explosion right at Izuku, as it would land right in his stomach, sending Izuku through 2 walls, as the rubble would start to collapse onto him, as Izuku would grab the bricks around him and would throw them off, as Izuku would then start to run just around Bakugo, as Bakugo had basically broken a ton of walls, opening up the area, as Izuku would start to jump off of all the rubble, as Izuku had become very agile and quick through all of his training with Endeavor. So Bakugo would start to spin in circles, just sending random explosions everywhere, as Izuku would finally jump in and would punch Bakugo right in the gut. Remember, Izuku's flames are so powerful, they could scar someone for life, so Izuku has to be very careful with how he plays his cards with his classmates. So Izuku's punch would burn Bakugo, but it wasn't very severe. His flames were severely weakened from how powerful they could be. So Izuku would then punch Bakugo across the face as the heat was finally starting to get to Bakugo. As Bakugo would just want to stop this, as Bakugo would go in for a final attack. As he would then use his grenade thing, or his grenade gauntlet on his wrist and arm, as he would then pull the little trigger thing out of the grenade, as he would then launch a massive explosion towards Izuku. As he was barreling towards Izuku, Izuku knew that he couldn't dodge this, and the only way he was going to be able to block it at all was to go into sort of the phase where he couldn't control anything. So he would start to power up his white flames, as his eyes would then go a soulless white, as white flames would go around his eyes. He was now basically in the same mode that he was when he was 7, as Izuku would slam the fireball up into the air as it would explode above the building, sending tiny little ashes down onto it, as it had burned a ton of the filing cabinets and paper that was inside the building. The building was meant to look like an office building that the villains had held captive. So when Uraraka saw this, she saw it, okay, let me just walk into the room, as she would see a massive hole in the room. She was looking out of the window when she saw this explosion, as she would walk into the room to see Todoroki looking a complete shock down at Izuku, who had his hand wrapped around Bakugo's face, as Bakugo was in a pile of rubble. As Izuku would then stand up and would look through the hole, looking straight at Todoroki, as Uraraka would jump across this hole, grabbing the bomb, as All Might would then come over the intercoms. And the heroes win! Congratulations, Izuku and Uraraka. Great teamwork. As Izuku had basically stared at Todoroki as a distraction for Uraraka to jump in and touch the bomb. And that's where I'm going to leave it off, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy part 2 of What If Deku had white flames. I thank you all for watching. Remember, please comment your what if suggestions down in the comment section below. And yeah, I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.